Good morning. I'm Kristen McIntyre, and this is Sky. And our sister Ella is inside, and Sky's gonna go join her. And we are so happy to be joining you this morning for North Chapel's virtual service on Sunday, May 30th. This morning's theme, and really this month's theme, has been healing the earth. And in our house this month, we spend lots of time outside. We've been digging and planting and weeding in the garden. We've dipped our toes in cold brooks and cold ponds. We've spotted tadpoles and worms, bumblebees, even a fox and baby lambs. And we're so grateful to be in this conversation with nature. We wanted to share a poem and a message with you from Joy Harjo. It's called Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people and all people are you. Remember you are this universe and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is that life is. Remember. And before we invite you to join into this morning's hymn, we wanted to remind you that the Reopening Committee has a reopening survey available on the website and also in this week's e-newsletter. And also, brown paper bag lunches have started on Wednesdays behind the church. They had their first one this past week, and I hear it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, my name is Laura Foley. I'm here in South Pomfret, Vermont, a beautiful May morning. I wanted to read you a poem today. It's about an experience I had with my son when he was little, and it's also really about all of us who have experiences of raising children or of having any kind of creation and then letting it go, the release. This is called Flight Test. My 6-year-old glues balsa wood 3-foot wings, his own design, whittling each day for weeks, adding paper clips to adjust its lateral balance. This breezy day, we carry the fragile craft between us, inching our way to open field. He launches his creation cleanly, and we hold our breath as it soars over trees, then hovers and stalls. Nothing I can do will stop its shattering. But he shrugs as we climb the hill home, as his agile mind designs his next adventure. Mine wonders when he won't need me to hold the tail up high, when too soon his plane will clear the trees.
Lord, dear Lord above, God of mercy, God of love, please look down and see my people through. I love these words. I deeply love the poetry, the writing, the artistry. These words come from Come Sunday. They were written by Duke Ellington. They come from the first of his sacred concerts, and they are a lovely body of music. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. My name is Leon Dunkley, and I'm honored to serve as minister here at North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel in Woodstock, Vermont. Today is Sunday, May the 30th, and the title of this morning's reflection is This Stage of Our Learning. It's about the things we have to hold in balance, healing and loving care in order to meet the challenges of our time. 100 years ago tomorrow marks a time of riot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In 1921, Black lives were shattered and Black-owned businesses were burned to the ground by an angry mob. As many as 300 lives were lost, taken by racially motivated and racially incited people who were rallied and deputized and weaponized by prominent leaders and city officials, some of whom, unfortunately, were members of the All Souls Church, the local Unitarian church in town. They had a strong hand in that disaster, and we need to face that squarely. This centennial marker is national news. You may have already heard this, and I quote, "A House Judiciary Committee convened in Washington, D.C. to address the ongoing impacts of the Tulsa massacre." One of the speakers, who was Viola Fletcher, an African-American woman who, proud and alert at the age of 107, is the oldest living survivor of the massacre. Viola Fletcher is incredible, still so powerful and so strong. Her testimony was moving. I am honored to share her words with you today. They were these: "I will never forget the violence of the white mob. When we left our house, I still see Black men being shot and Black bodies lying in the street. I still smell the smoke and see the fire. I still see Black businesses being burned, still hear the airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I live through the massacre every day." She was only 7 years old when this happened. She was traumatized so early in life, and trauma stops time. For Viola Fletcher, the violence of 1921 has not yet ended. Now, it is heartbreaking to share some of these moments, but it is also courageous for us to do so. It's courageous to do so dearly and prayerfully. It is brave to do so a full century after these events took place. Slowly, we are healing. Despite the continuing losses, so very much has happened in the last 100 years. In the Tulsa church this Sunday, they are looking honestly at what took place 100 years ago. They are looking lovingly and unflinchingly at the church's involvement in what transpired. This aspect of their healing, this aspect of our healing, began more than a decade ago. I visited All Souls in Tulsa back in 2013. My leg had been broken that summer, and I was still on crutches, but my first healing steps, my first dancing steps without crutches took place in the All Souls Church in Tulsa. I'd spent a few days there learning about what happened in 1921. Healing was taking place then and now on many levels, and it continues. Broken bones are bound. Braver bridges are built in the soul and the heartland of our country. Today, we join with our sister church in Tulsa, as together we all move forward, reaching upward and digging deep with both roots and wings. Hold me close and set me free. Make it so, and let it be. Dear Lord, Lord above, God of mercy and God of love, please look down and see my people through. All of my people. I love these words, the poetry, the writing, and the artistry. They feel so right for the healing work that we must do at this stage of our learning. So to all souls, I say good morning. It is good to be together. Poets and writers and lovers of the arts of all kinds. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to wash clean the slate of the human imagination. We are all looking for the key to happiness. Art is our guide. Laura Dern is a guide. She is an actor. She starred in an episode of The West Wing in its 3rd season. Aaron Sorkin was still writing and directing. She and Aaron Sorkin were a good team. I love his writing and I love her craft. They work well together. I love what the two of them have to say about life. And I love what Aaron Sorkin has to say about writing. It is helpful for people like me, he says. Writing, like any other art form, there are chunks of it that can be taught and there are chunks of it that can't be taught. So there are teachers, you could become a playwriting major or a screenwriting major. And there are books of various qualities that you can read. And you can listen to people like me, Aaron Sorkin says. But every writer is different, end quote. Every creative artist tries to convey the unconveyable, journeying bravely out into the great unknown. All of us try to express the inexpressible, try to capture that elusive spark, fleeting, unpredictable, and quixotic. Each of us fully aware of the risk of failure, which is commonplace, normative, fully aware of the probability, even the certainty of failure. We make friends with it. Failure is our guide. It helps us on our way. Aaron Sorkin says, "My hope is that I am able to say something that will be meaningful to some writer and allow them to do what they want to do and get better." Failure is not a shortcoming. It is a signpost. It is as constant as the northern star, as constant as gravity. It is central to the praxis of moving forward. One should expect it along the way when one is creating that which has never existed before. Sure, Mozart could get the new thing right on the very first time, but he was a genius, and that kind of genius is very rare. Most of us fail our good way forward, doing the best we can, learning by trial and error, by experimentation. It's like buying new clothes at a secondhand store. We try on a lot of things until we end up with something that we like. That's how I experience the creative process, and I like hearing about how it is for others. Aaron Sorkin wrote a West Wing episode that was all about an excellent poet. It was called the U.S. Poet Laureate, and it was about a talented young artist named Tabitha Fortis that was played by Laura Dern. Tabitha Fortis was a strong and a rebellious artist, influenced by revolutionaries, influenced by the likes of Adrienne Rich and Anne Sexton and Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg, who wrote Howl in the 1950s. It's a famous poem. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo, the machinery of night. Like us, Allen Ginsberg was searching for something. Howl is a brilliant poem, so widely read, even by people who are fictional, people who don't exist, like Tabitha Fortis, who had committed that poem to memory. It flows like learned water over the banks of the New York Times, through the open channels of Greenwich Village and into our hearts. It flows into mine. It is a Beat Generation classic. We hold on to this one and we use it to beat down, to ward off, to push back the climbing ivies of store-bought education and less than independent thought. We use it to recover and set free the wild-eyed wisdom of life in the here and now. Howl is dangerous. That's why Tabitha Fortis was drawn to it. That's why she was taken by Allen Ginsberg and his way with words. She knew these lines by heart and she recited them frequently, but one day, something within her changed. Something shifted deep inside, too deeply perhaps. It broke her down a little bit, to a supportive friend, she said, "I know Allen Ginsberg's poem like the back of my hand, like politicians know voting districts. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through." She was in a public forum about the beauty and the value of poetry. She was reciting the Ginsberg poem, and all of a sudden she couldn't remember it anymore. It was gone from her. So she just stopped speaking and left the forum. And they went on without her. Looking back on that experience, on that public failure, she said, "Some people think that it's the artist's job to speak the truth. An artist's job is to captivate the audience for however long we have asked for their attention. If we stumble into truth, we got lucky. We don't get to decide what truth is. I write poetry, and that's how I enter the world." End quote. What kind of artist are you, and how do you enter the world? If you were a writer, how would you enter? If you were a poet or a painter, how would you enter? How would your art lead you to enter the world? I ask this because I fear that we're in the habit of not entering. We've gotten used to that. We're in the habit of expecting things to change without our efforts. It's a common mistake. There's even a pop song about it. A pop song that's called "Waiting for the World to Change." It won't do so without our efforts. Like I said, it's a good song, but it's a far cry from Allen Ginsberg. Sometimes we find it harder to enter into the world than we expect. But how will we do it? Through the written word, through the spoken ones, through rhyme, rhythm, reason. Shakespeare entered the world by reaching beyond the limits of the imagination, by reaching beyond the boundaries of expectation and touching our hearts. He described one of his most famous plays in an incredibly interesting way. The prologue to Romeo and Juliet is familiar to us. It begins, "Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean." The prologue ends in a beautiful way. The fearful passage of their love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end not could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. Shakespeare described Romeo and Juliet as the 2 hours the 2 hours traffic of our stage. He used these words, "our stage." But what does he really mean by that? And more importantly, how are these words useful for us today at this stage of our learning? The challenges before us are great. Sometimes they seem insurmountable, the ongoing problems of systemic racism, cultural divisiveness, increasingly political hostility in the context of an international pandemic that triggered a global economic downturn, all this in the context of a climate crisis that should be at the very core of our concern and isn't. There are lots of reasons to disengage, to turn off, but we shouldn't do this. Shakespeare described Romeo and Juliet as the 2 hours traffic of our stage. He uses these words, "our stage," and here's how they were meaningful to us. Here's how they were useful at this stage of our learning. These words are meaningful and useful because they break the fourth wall. They encourage our maturity and they foster our disillusionment and our growth. Do you know what the fourth wall is? Do you know what I mean by that? The fourth wall is a theatrical convention. Actors are familiar with it. The fourth wall refers to, and this I quote, "the performance convention in which an invisible or imagined wall separates the actors from the audience. And while the audience can see through this wall, the convention assumes that the actors act as if they cannot." We're all familiar with this. It's a 16th century thing. It's something that we inherited from the time of William Shakespeare. The good thing about it is that the fourth wall allowed for much more intimate performance practices. The bad thing is that it taught us how to disengage. When Shakespeare says that Romeo and Juliet is the 2 hours traffic of our stage, I would like to think that what he means by this is that the stage in live theater is shared, that we are all engaged when we're all there interacting with one another. It's different, of course, with television. The fourth wall is impenetrable. No matter what you throw at your flat screen TV, you can never distract the actors. You can't get their attention. Not so in live performances. Shakespeare pushes against the fourth wall concept a little bit. He asks of us, his audience, he asks us not only for our attention, but also for our engagement. This stage of ours is shared and we have to show up. We can't just zone out, and not without some risk and consequence. Clearly, we still use the fourth wall concept for so much of our stage and screen performances. Aaron Sorkin uses it. Laura Dern uses it. It's commonplace. Back in 1985, though, Whoopi Goldberg started playing with things. She had a show on Broadway, a solo thing, a one-woman show. Stand-up comedy, much of it improvised. She offered monologues from the perspective of 5 fascinating characters: a valley girl from Southern California, a 6-year-old black girl child, an elderly woman in the Caribbean, a middle-aged woman who struggles with cerebral palsy, and her favorite character, a young black man who goes by the name of Fontaine. Fontaine is fantastic. He's quick on his feet, and this works well for him. Whoopi Goldberg has Fontaine walk across a dimly lit stage singing a song to himself, singing a song called Around the World in 80 Days. He sings the Nat King Cole version of the song, but in a much cooler way. It's perfect for this character named Fontaine. And as the lights come up on the stage, the lights spill over and flood into the house. The audience becomes visible. Impossibly, Fontaine becomes aware of them. He looks through the fourth wall, he pierces it in real time, and he says, "What's happening?" And the audience stiffens and they don't know how to respond. So he asks again, and still nothing. Finally, Fontaine has to take the reins and he says, "Look, y'all, there ain't no fourth wall here. So probably if I'm talking to somebody, I'm talking to you. Because there ain't but 2 of us here. So if I say what's happening, you all say everything is everything, or whatever you say, okay? So we're gonna try this again." And Fontaine heads up stage and the lights come down and the sound goes up with cheers and applause and laughter. And then the whole thing starts again with the dimly lit stage and the singing of 80 Days. I find this performance truly beautiful. It was perfect back in the day, perfect when we were at that stage of our learning. It's different now. This performance debuted 36 years ago, and it's a really long time. In 36 years, you can grow an American president. Still, I find this performance quite beautiful, but I ask myself, what wakes us as well as this performance did in our time? What washes us clean? What provides us with the fresh breath in this era of I can't breathe? I find myself turning to the opening passage of the Hebrew Bible in the book of Genesis, where it is written, "In the beginning, when God created the heavens and earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters." A wind from God swept over the waters. This is beautiful. Somehow it is possible for us to capture and nurture and cherish this breath. Whoopi Goldberg cherished this breath in a spectacular way, and I'm trying on a thought here. I don't know if this will work. I don't know if it will fit, if it will match. But what if this holy breath, what if we were to understand that holy breath as laughter? How would laughter help us to enter into this world? How would laughter help us to open the gates that sometimes close within us? How can laughter help us break forth into the morning with the speech of the blackbird and with the laughter of a newborn child? As we turn and face the great challenges that are before us, let's lighten our load. We can start to heal. We can start to laugh and get over ourselves a little bit by taking down the walls that stand between us, by taking down the walls within ourselves. Lord, dear Lord above, God of mercy, God of love, please look down and see my people through. May be so. Blessed be and amen.